I have Bethan Thomas from HotTea Mama. Welcome. How are you
Thank
doing?
you.
You
I'm
good?
good. Yeah, thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Excellent. So I'd love to. I mean, I've been doing a bit of research, and I had a kind of list of things that came up. You started the business in 2017. Do you want to take me back to 2017 and how it all happened and why the business came about?
Yeah, so 2017, I was working as a tea buyer. That's what I've always done before I
Yeah.
set up business. And I had almost a year old little girl, um, and yeah, was pregnant with my son. And my best friend suggested it'd be a really good idea to set up a business, which looking back, it's like, "Oh," but no, she essentially had 2 children in the space of a year. So we were kind of in that, like, well, we were probably both in our 30s, but
Yeah.
early motherhood stage. And she's Australian, she adores coffee, she had to cut out coffee a lot. She was then, having not drunk tea very much, very interested in, well, what teas can I drink? What can't I drink?
Oh, yeah.
Um, yeah, what could help? She had really bad morning sickness. She read about raspberry leaf for birth preparation, which, if you've been through it, a lot of women drink raspberry leaf to help prepare for labour. And she basically said, "Why has nobody created a brand that targets this kind of niche audience with really delicious, functional teas?"
Yeah.
And my background is in tea. I have a
Yeah.
degree in tea science, and I'd worked as a tea buyer for around kind of 12 years at that point. Um, and I thought it was a great idea. So we just went from there, but very much on the side. It was side hustle.
Yeah. Okay.
Um,
At what point did it become more than just a side hustle?
well, relatively quickly, I suppose, in that we kind of self-funded all the production. It took about a year to get, to a point of having um, the website and product in hand.
Mhm.
But within about 6 months, it was clear that people were buying it. We weren't doing any ad spend or
Yeah. It was just
anything.
organically happening.
Yeah, we were just posting on Instagram every day,
Yeah.
like, and just hit a chord, I think, and particularly because I literally had a small baby at that
Yeah.
point, and products designed for pregnancy and breastfeeding. Um, it just worked well. We were making, relevant content for people, but also had products that people were searching for online because they couldn't find them elsewhere. Um, so, I mean, I kept my job for a very long time. I mean, was it about 3 years? COVID was when it really kicked off, and I actually
Yeah.
paid myself a salary.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Yeah.
I think COVID for e-com, certainly e-com businesses that were in the early stages was a bit of a hit, really.
Yeah, I was actually in a cake bakery, it's called, near where I live yesterday, and I was talking to the owners there, and they said, "Oh, well, COVID, it really took off. We were delivering cakes,
Yeah.
across like 5 counters." Um, and I said, "Yeah, you never want to celebrate a global pandemic, but so
No.
what are some benefits?"
Yeah, it was good
Um,
for us as an agency. It was good for us too,
yeah.
Yeah, a strange one. But so the pandemic was good for you. And you talked earlier about the getting the website. The website you have now, is that the same website as you had then? Have you?
No, no. So our products kind of totally changed. So did our website. So originally we worked with a fantastic independent designer who did the web design, and it was
Yeah.
a WooCommerce site
Okay. Yeah.
that he built for us. But we moved pre-pandemic, I think, to Shopify.
Yeah.
It's all somewhat of a blur when you run a business
Yeah.
alongside small people. Um, but yeah, so we changed the website, and we sort of changed our packaging a couple of
Yeah.
years ago and moved to be organic. Lots of things we could do once we built up revenue and
Yeah,
material.
sure. You started, got traction, and then it was like, okay, let's look at how we do this properly. So,
Exactly.
what you mentioned WooCommerce to Shopify. What was the primary driver back then for moving from WooCommerce to Shopify?
Well, I think ease, but also at that time, I remember we did some family and friends investment, and the friends who we were talking to, kind of one was in California in the kind of tech space,
Yeah,
another in South Africa, but working in kind of investment, and they were all saying, "Oh no, you should for an e-commerce you know,
Size away.
business, you need to have Shopify. It just makes everything easy, works well. And it just did give us so much more flexibility compared to WooCommerce, where I mean now our Shopify site does have a lot of bespoke coding, and we work with a great designer to support us with that. But back then it was just out of the box site and did just immediately improve the
Yeah.
conversion.
Hassle free, I think, relative to WooCommerce. Yeah.
Yeah, I think great functionality for making things simple for consumers,
Yeah.
and yeah, works well.
Cool. Excellent. You talked earlier about the fact that you launched the business, you were posting on Instagram. Somehow you struck a chord with people out there that ended up buying. What was the point that you started looking at? Well, actually, we need to market this.
Well, I guess originally we were very aware we needed to market it, so that
Yeah.
posting on Instagram was not like a mistake. It was just
No,
we
sure.
knew
Yeah.
within kind of the time restraints we had, it was the best way to reach people.
Yeah.
And we ended up doing a lot of collaboration at that point as well.
Yeah.
So brands within our space running competitions, or doing back when Instagram lives were a bit more popular, doing things like that, reciprocal blogs. So we were kind of anything that was free and
You were
available
doing.
to
Yeah.
us, we were trying to do. Um, and I think it was I got a government grant during COVID because we expanded our range. So what we found is that people loved our products for pregnancy and breastfeeding, but actually they had a sister or a mum who was perimenopausal,
Sure.
or they had a friend, or they themselves had PCOS or endometriosis, and were looking for, well, is there actually a natural, nourishing, product that can support these conditions rather than just pregnancy? So we developed some new blends to support periods and menopause,
Yeah.
and were lucky that there was a government grant available to support the launch of new products. Um, and we got that. And in order to get that, you had to say what you were going to do with the money that they hiding. So we looked. Amazon at that point had been quite big, not direct e-commerce, but e-commerce nonetheless.
Yeah, you're selling online, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So we, as part of that package, hired an agency to help with advertising, which we, with very small budgets, just sort of made stuff up. And we also looked at doing big sampling runs, so work with
Yeah.
healthcare professionals, so midwives, doulas, getting individually wrapped tea bags to put into kind of a sampling type program. Um, did we do anything else with the money? Oh, Google Ads and
Yeah.
Facebook ads. So working again, we work with freelancer rather than an agency on that. And yeah, that was probably when we first kind of put money into it and could see, return on
Yeah,
investment.
yeah. And how was that? Because that's a in a startup business, that's a big step. It sounds like you did really, really well getting that early traction. But
Mm.
one of the challenges is that next step and how you go about that. Talk to me about what that was like.
Well, I think it's hard because the things we'd done whilst we'd not spent very much money had been very successful. So
Yeah,
I think
sure, yeah.
it's interesting bringing in people. So a few things like on Amazon, we just could not afford to keep the agency on, based on, yeah, the kind of return that we were getting. But we actually got amazing kind of insight to be able to sort of run it ourselves.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah.
Afterwards, I mean, we now work with an agency on Amazon because we're expanding internationally, and they're fantastic. And
Yeah.
I will wait to see how the ads work. Um, but yeah, it was good to get kind of the expertise and the knowledge. So I think as a small business, it's interesting at those early stages to really take what you can and then work out what works. So things like meta ads,
Yeah.
no way I could do those. Like far too complicated. Worked very, very well. I mean, this was pre all the fallout with Apple, so our results were like insane. Same person ran Google Ads for us. Google Ads way too high cost per acquisition
Yeah.
based on our, we're not a very expensive product.
Yeah.
Yeah, our average cart value. So all these kind of learnings just then allow you to channel. And
Yeah.
again, working with healthcare professionals is actually really good because it builds trust, and you're getting product into your hands, to sample
For sure, yeah.
your core target. So yeah, certain things I think you just learn that you can't do, and other things
Yeah.
potentially you have to. And again, at a certain point of turnover, I think it's much better to use experts. But
Yeah.
when you don't have huge budgets, you've got to be a bit selective.
Yeah, it's interesting. Was I the number of founders that I talked to that, and I'm going to come to a question in a minute, but is that the amount of learning that you've had to do, and I think it suits a certain individual that is having that kind of curiosity and trying to understand how things work. What's the biggest lesson on the acquisition side and bringing in new customers? What's the biggest thing that you've learned in the last, certainly in the early days?
Oh, just targeting. Like, yeah, just really understanding your customer. I think we had a huge benefit that we didn't just kind of see a market opportunity totally separate from our own lives.
Yeah, sure.
Um, so I think we sort of were our consumer, and
Yeah,
therefore
well,
we thought,
you were solving a problem that you'd experienced.
yeah, exactly. And we
Yeah,
could really talk to those consumers in a very genuine kind of trust building manner. I think it's interesting again as you kind of grow our business um lacks some diversity, even though we're actually, we don't employ any men. We're ethnically diverse. But we're all women.
yeah,
you kind of you start to go, oh well, actually they probably need to bring in a man, but historically you're like, oh no, I want people who understand what we're
yeah.
doing, because that worked well for us at the beginning. um
You don't
but
want
yeah,
any of us. You don't want any of us men anywhere near it.
no, I really do. I want to like I want a man who wants to work flexibly around his own childcare to, support his family. That's what I want. But yeah, it's, I think, understanding who your customer is, where they
Yeah,
are,
yeah,
what they're doing. Um, we get approached all the time, even now, about sort of sampling boxes that are like foodie related, give your product away, or beauty boxes. And it's just not specific enough for acquisition for us. We really want to find people where they're looking for help with the problems that they're facing,
yeah,
which we understand really strongly in terms of
yeah,
pregnancy, breastfeeding,
yeah.
um, you know, PCOS, PMS, perimenopause.
It's given you it's given you a real a boost, I guess. But then I suppose that's how the business came about. You were trying to solve a problem, weren't you? Really?
Yeah, and I think you've got to hit that sweet spot. So I was interestingly talking to someone yesterday, and they were saying, "Oh, your niche," and we are absolutely niche. I don't disagree with that. But the interesting thing about our niches is that they're exceptionally high spend. So women will spend more in their pregnancies on themselves,
Yeah.
on sort of wellness products and nutrition, than they will throughout their entire life on their periods, even though they're having it
Yeah,
every
sure.
month
Yeah.
for 30, 40 years. um Actually knowing that you've got, a customer, that you've got a product that's right, that really helps them with a pain point, and that the market is big enough to justify spending some money trying to get them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is really key. And I actually think, going too broad, you make it too hard for yourself. If you go into some mega niche, you're in trouble as well. But yeah, just understanding your customer and the market itself
Yeah.
is really important.
And the world's also a big place to be niche as well. I mean, you're talking about international expansion as well. What does that look like at the moment?
So we've kind of got into a strategic partnership, for, yeah, well, in everywhere, I suppose, because you're working with distributors. But particularly in the US, we've partnered with a brand called Lansano, who are an incredible mum-focused pregnancy breastfeeding brand. And they're just such a great fit for us. We've got very similar brand values. Our aim in what we're doing is to support women. Ours is to naturally really nourish them. Lansano historically had been all about, breast pumps and lanolin, kind of nipple cream, things that make an enormous difference to a mum, but in a sort of medical device sector. And we co-branded, and yeah, it's been a great success so far. We've
Sure.
launched into 1,200 Target stores,
Wow.
co-branded with them, doing really well on kind of Amazon, which is a huge channel there. We could never have done that on our own.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we could have, but we would have had to done a lot.
I think with a market like the US, having a partner involved makes a lot of sense. It really,
Mm.
really does.
No,
How did that come about?
so I met them at a baby show I did
Okay.
in like 2000, it's probably 2019. And in all honesty, it was disastrous for me on a personal level because my partner was meant to have our children. He had to go to China on a work trip. My parents were on holiday. So I ended up staying in my parents' house because it was near the NEC in Birmingham. But hiring a nanny who I'd never met to look after my children, one of whom was only like, like 1.5. I think he was still in nappies.
Wow.
And, I was so stressed. I was on my own on this stand. I mean, I think that behind me, that is the kind of design we had. It was a stand that I kept, um, couldn't go to loo. But one of the things that happened was that I met one of the Lansano team members who was kind of just walking around.
Wow.
She went on a couple of years later to have, a baby, but she trained to be a hypnobirthing instructor. So the health and wellness sampling we were doing, she said, "Oh, can I have some of your samples for my clients?" We did that.
Wow.
And then they, several years after that, were looking at how they address lower birth rates in the world and diversification in products being a key thing they can do. They started to look at nutrition, and she said, "You need to talk to HotTea Mama." Um, and
That's
we went
that's
from there.
that could have gone so many. Had you decided to no, I'm not going to go to the NEC. That's mind
No,
blowing.
I'd given up because it was too difficult. But yeah, I mean, honestly, I remember buying my dad, I bought him a personalized tube of Toblerone, because it was Father's Day. And I was like, I'll leave it in the house after I leave. But it was so stressful. I didn't get a place in the parking queue for breakdown. And I was worried about getting back for this lovely nanny. So I was like, right, I'm just going to carry everything. And I was running back and forth. It was raining. I ended up just like throwing things in a bin because I was like, "Oh my God, I'm going to be so late. It's terrific." Got to the car and couldn't find the car keys. Was just convinced that I'd like dropped them at some point. So I ended up eating the entire Toblerone in like one stress
Oh wow.
mess. And
That's
it's those
some
kind of
story.
things. I mean, it's not really related to e-commerce, but I think it's so important to realize that some of those horrific moments, um,
Yeah.
where you're like, "What am I doing? Like,
Yeah.
how is this my life?" Then can lead to, they all teach you
Every
something.
cloud has a silver lining. I mean, it's wow, that's some story. That really is.
Yeah, so hence keeping the very no longer on brand,
It's a
yeah, and
memory before
vinyl. Yeah,
character building. That's what it is.
indeed.
Excellent. Moving back to I mean, that's a fascinating story. That's absolutely mind blowing. But going back to the whole kind of e-commerce type, the more the conversion side of things. You touched
Yeah.
on audience earlier, how important that is. What have you learned from a conversion perspective?
So I think we're quite a premium product.
Yeah.
So there's value in discounting for conversion, but being clever with it. So
Oh yeah.
yeah, funnels and pop-ups. I mean, originally we did a pop-up where you, rather than offering a discount, our first pop-up gave you like a tea guide, sort of women's wellness and tea guide. And that worked quite well, to be fair. But a discount worked much better.
Yeah.
So we now discount and having funnels in place to make sure you're targeting those people. Window shoppers are a big. We have a lot of people come very, very regularly, but not purchase. So having specific kind of targeting,
Yeah.
um, yeah, works well. And I think again, I saw an interesting thing recently about how kind of driving intent in order to get to conversion, seeing it as a funnel is a bit narrow-minded. You should kind of see it as like an ellipse almost,
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
that people are kind of dipping in and out of everything you're doing to raise awareness, and intent, as well as trying to
Yeah.
convert them. So some of our products are extremely time specific. So if we can get people at early pregnancy, we can be relatively confident that by the time they're at the end of their pregnancy, we can easily convert them to our raspberry leaf tea because it's a very commonly drunk product and we've brought them on board as a brand. But on those other early stage products that are slightly less
Yeah.
kind of necessary. We need to kind of work ourselves
Yeah,
to drive.
that's interesting. Because my next point is about that retention, and I'm curious as to know um, the journey that the consumer goes on, and really about looking at the frequency of purchase, whether it be the products in early pregnancy or later or whatever. What does
Yeah.
that look like? Are you taking your clients on a journey?
Yeah, so I think part of our product development kind of does that
It's
as
doing that.
well,
Yeah, sure.
because
Yep.
obviously the sort of negative we have compared to a product you would drink all the time is that the strong niche we have for pulling people in and converting them means they might then think, oh, well, I can't drink it anymore because I'm no longer breastfeeding or
So
whatever.
yeah.
So definitely in terms of product development, I think that's incredibly important for us to have the right kind of products to extend the lifetime value.
Yeah.
So we make teas, but we also do hot chocolates now as well. And it's about trying to get people as early in pregnancy as possible, so you can then guide them through kind of, morning sickness,
Yeah.
generally kind of feeling a bit down and not that glowy, to the end of pregnancy where raspberry leaf is great, and onto breastfeeding products, which kind of are very repeat purchase heavy.
Yeah.
And then after that, again, when people finish,
The next child and
well,
the next one.
we do get a lot
Yeah.
of yeah, it's quite funny because the repeat, the actual, what's the right word, the time scale for the repeat purchase,
Yeah.
we want to increase how much we get at that kind of stage of life.
Yeah.
But the frustration we sometimes have is that actually, yeah, you have to wait 9 months or a year or 2 years if people don't like tea. But again, that's where you diversify and drop in other products. So our breastfeeding hot chocolate is currently our highest repeat purchase product, partly because a lot of people buy 4 packs of breastfeeding tea.
Okay.
You get a discount on that and free delivery. So they kind of order that less frequently, but in big hits.
Sure.
Whereas the hot chocolate is just 1 pack. They'll use it up relatively quickly. So yeah, there's a mix in there. And obviously the period support products should then continue you on throughout life. But it is something that we want to improve more. I think our lifetime value isn't as good as it could be. And it's something we're looking at, actively looking to improve.
Yeah. Excellent. How do you measure that at the moment?
So we have Looker Studio data set up that we worked on with a kind of freelancer who we use as and when we need, because it just wasn't possible in the before GA4 came in. Google Analytics was quite good as a novice, but we've set up Looker Studio now properly with all our kind of key conversion rates per page, customer journey maps, and value per page, and then the lifetime value.
Yeah, brilliant. What does the future hold? What does the rest of 2025 look like for you?
So on an e-com kind of perspective, very much sort of trying to just work and improve what we're doing. Our email has all been updated. We haven't yet gone to Klaviyo, even though I think everybody says you should go to Klaviyo. But we use Omnisend, but have just redesigned all of our emails. So are looking to kind of drive more in that way and improve kind of retention. We've just updated the website as well, and improved that. So we're doing quite a lot of work on that, and then driving that we've had such big success in Holland and Barrett in the UK.
Have you?
We've been in with them for about 3 years now, and we had 36% growth last year. The aim is to kind of keep maintaining that, but bring on some more health and wellness retailers as well.
Excellent, good stuff. So looking at kind of advice for people like you when you started out, what would be your kind of top 3 things to advise aspiring founders of?
So I think it's like an odd mix almost. So firstly, sort of follow your gut like a little bit. I think if you overanalyze or worry too much, you probably won't do anything. So not to say like ignore all data, but yeah, trust your gut because we've
Yeah.
definitely had a lot of knockbacks. Don't take negatives as negative. I think try and reframe as much as you can. So
Yeah.
on e-com, if your conversion rate isn't great, like try and look at where your customers are coming from and whether that's the right place. Where else could you get them from? It was really important to get good at reframing problems to find
Yeah.
solutions.
Yeah. I like that. That's good. Yeah.
And I honestly think that's the biggest like driver of success in successful kind of small businesses. Um, what would my third piece of advice be? Go to the random show and don't
leave your kids with a random
stranger that you'd never met.
and,
Um,
and devour a whole Toblerone.
I think that comes down to trusting your gut, though, doesn't it? Like,
Yes.
I think get help where you need it. So I think again, small business. I think what makes a good small business person is that in general you're probably quite good at a lot of things, but
Yeah.
there are certain things you actually need to be expert in. And I would certainly say, in my experience, any kind of paid advertising covers that.
Yeah.
So we've benefited hugely over the years from working with two different people on our ad campaigns, and they are worth their weight in absolute gold. Concentrate on the other stuff that you're good at.
Good stuff. Brilliant. It's been lovely having you on. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I think there's a really good chat and there's some really interesting stuff in there.
Oh, thanks for having me.
You're welcome.